The late morning sun filtered through the streaky windows of Fairhill Elementary's cafeteria, warming the chatter of students hunched over trays of mystery meat and lukewarm milk. Laughter drifted through the air like the clinking of cutlery. But it wasn't the kind that made anyone feel good. It had that sharp, the kind that meant someone somewhere was being laughed at. At a corner table by the wall, separated from the main flow of students, sat Lila and Luna Carson. They were identical twins, 11 years old, small for their age. Long tangled hair the color of dusty bronze, eyes that carried a quiet kind of sadness, and clothes a size too big, clearly handed down through donation bins and second-hand shops. The school counselor had assigned them lunchroom seating with a low stimulation environment. But everyone knew what that meant. The weird kids, the poor kids, the quiet ones, they sat at the back. They weren't weird. They weren't dumb. But they were poor. Everyone could tell. The Carson twins had been at Fairhill for just over 3 months, transferred from another school after being placed with their new guardian, Ethan Carter. Ethan was a single man in his mid-30s with kind eyes, calloused hands, and a quiet determination that had guided him through the tragedy of losing his wife years ago, and, more recently, the daunting challenge of adopting 2 broken girls from a fractured system. He wasn't their father by blood, but he was more of a parent than anyone else had ever been. And though the girls never called him Dad out loud, they clung to him like the roots of a tree, clinging to the last patch of soil in a flood. School hadn't been easy, whispered behind cupped hands. They smell like old books. Their shoes don't match. Did you see Luna's coat? That thing's from like 1980, when today, something more cruel was brewing. The announcement came over the intercom just before lunch ended. Attention students! This year's Spring Talent Showcase is coming up next Friday. As always, each class will nominate performers. Your teachers will take nominations today, and selections will be finalized by tomorrow. We can't wait to see your talent. It was a cheerful message, meant to inspire, but inspiration wasn't what filled room 4C later that afternoon. It was mischief. Sitting in the back row, Greg Mather, a ringleader of the class's popular group, leaned over to whisper to his friend Josh with a grin. "Dare you to nominate the weird twins." Josh snorted. "Sing, what?" "A bedtime cry." Greg chuckled. Exactly. The teacher, Mrs. Donahue, was jotting down names on the whiteboard as hands shot up around the room. Sophie and Max doing a dance routine, Jeremy playing violin. Anyone else? Josh raised his hand, trying not to smirk. "Yes?" Mrs. Donahue asked. "I'd like to nominate Lila and Luna to sing." A few scattered giggles broke out. All heads turned toward the twins, who shrank further into their seats. Mrs. Donahue glanced at the girls, then back at the board. "Lila and Luna singing. We'll check if they're comfortable with it." She moved on, or perhaps pretending not to notice the smirking faces behind her. After class, Lila and Luna walked silently down the hallway, clutching their beat-up backpacks like shields. They were laughing. Luna whispered, her voice barely audible. Lila didn't answer, churned with shame and dread. She hated being noticed, especially like this. Ethan noticed something was wrong the moment they climbed into his truck that afternoon. The girls were usually quiet, but this was different. He saw it in the way Luna stared out the window without blinking, how Lila fidgeted with her sleeves like she was trying to disappear inside them. He didn't press. Not right away. He'd learned to wait until they felt safe enough to speak. Later that evening, as he warmed soup on the stove and the girls sat at the kitchen table coloring silently, he broached the subject. "Something happened at school." Lila looked up. Luna's crayon stilled. "They want us to sing," Lila murmured. For the showcase. Sing. Ethan asked gently. Did you volunteer? She shook her head. Someone else picked us. The air shifted in the kitchen. Ethan put down the ladle and crossed over to them, crouching so he was eye level. You don't have to do anything you don't want to, he said carefully. And you don't owe anyone a performance, especially not if it's to make fun of you. Luna blinked at him, her voice thin. But what if we can do it? Ethan raised his eyebrows. Do you want to? They exchanged a look, a private twin thing. For a second, something unspoken passed between them. A memory dream. We used to sing, Luna said quietly, with her mother. The woman who had taught them lullabies before the world turned into a cold game of pass, the orphan. Ethan's chest ached. Then maybe you should sing. Not for them. For yourselves. That night, Ethan brought down an old wooden guitar from the attic. It was dusty and slightly out of tune, but it had been his wife's. Music had once filled their home, before grief silenced it. Maybe now, music could bring life back. He strummed a few chords. The twins sat on the couch, wide-eyed. Do you remember the song? He asked. Hush now. Little willow tree, let the winds sing you to sleep. They began to hum, shy at first. Then they sang. Soft, trembling voices weaving into each other, one harmony lacing around the other like a gentle embrace. Ethan strummed along quietly. Tears threatening. It was the first time he'd heard them open up like that, and it was beautiful. Over the next few days, they practiced in secret. Just a few minutes each evening, sitting cross-legged in the living room, warmed by the fire and the kind of peace only love could build. Their voices grew stronger, still soft, but filled with something powerful. Truth. Friday came fast. At school, Lila and Luna were quiet as usual. The auditorium buzzed with energy. Students rehearsing in the wings, teachers herding their classes into rows of chairs, parents with phones at the ready. The girls waited backstage, trembling, listening to the laughter and applause of the audience. Greg and his gang were sitting front row, faces split in expectant grins. They were waiting to laugh. Mrs. Donahue ushered the twins forward. You're up next. Ready? Luna's hand found Lila's. They nodded. When they stepped onto the stage, the murmuring began. The whispers. The chuckles. Greg elbowed Josh and pointed. But then the music started. A simple recorded by Ethan so they wouldn't be alone. And the girls began to sing. Hush now. Little willow tree, let the winds sing you to sleep. The auditorium went still. Their voices, delicate and echoing, rose and wrapped around the crowd like a lullaby for broken souls. It was the kind of sound that didn't shout for attention, but demanded it anyway by its sheer honesty. Their tones, though young, carried an ancient weight, as if they were singing for every child who had ever been forgotten. No one laughed. No one even moved. By the time they finished, tears stained the cheeks of more than a few teachers. A mother in the third row sobbed quietly. Even Greg sat frozen, unable to mock what he didn't understand. The silence lasted longer than the song. And then, slowly, people stood. Applause thundered across the room like waves crashing after a long stillness. Not polite clapping. Real, emotional ovation. The twins stepped back, overwhelmed. They looked at each other, then toward the side of the stage where Ethan stood, watching with his heart in his throat. They smiled. And for the first time in their lives, Lila and Luna weren't invisible. They weren't the punchline. They weren't the poor girls in hand-me-downs. They were seen, and their voices had done that, not for attention or fame, but for truth. The days following the talent showcase were unlike anything Lila and Luna Carson had ever experienced. For the first time since they could remember, People didn't look at them with pity or mockery. For the first time, they weren't ignored. But not in the cruel, sideways, glancing kind of way. No. This time it was as if they had stepped out of the shadows and into the center of the world's attention, wrapped in a kind of fragile, sudden light that neither of them knew what to do with. The Monday after the performance, the halls of Fair Hill Elementary were buzzing. Started in whispers and sidelong glances, but the whispers weren't mocking anymore. They were reverent, almost confused. Did you hear them sing? I didn't even know they could talk. They sounded like angels. Lila and Luna walked side by side down the hallway, shoulders pressed together, arms brushing every few steps. Normally, they kept their eyes low, avoided stares, moved as quickly as possible to their classroom. But that morning they looked up. Students smiled at them. Actual smiles, not smirks. A few even waved. Mrs. Donahue greeted them with a wide, warm grin as they entered the classroom. Good morning, Lila. Good morning, Luna. You two were absolutely stunning on Friday. You should be very proud. The twins murmured their thanks and took their seats. A small bouquet of wildflowers sat on their shared desk, left anonymously, with a ribbon that had, "Thank you," scribbled in blocky handwriting. But even as warmth bloomed in their chests, a familiar fear hovered around the edges. This couldn't be real, could it? Nice things didn't last. By lunch, the school had uploaded a video of their performance to the official district YouTube channel. Ethan had signed the permission forms last week, never expecting much to come of it. But within hours, the video began circulating. First among teachers and local parents, then somehow, through the tangled web of social media, it broke out into the wider world. A local news outlet picked up the clip and ran a short story about the mysterious twin girls with voices like magic. Then it was a blog. A national account reposted it. Then another. By Wednesday, the video had passed 250,000 views. Ethan Carter didn't know what to make of it. He worked part-time at a music store, tuning pianos and fixing instruments, and spent the rest of his time doing odd jobs to keep the bills paid. The house he rented was small, 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, and nestled at the edge of a quiet street where nobody paid much attention. He had always preferred it that way. Peace, stability, control. The girls had brought light into his home, but also a great deal of responsibility. Healing didn't happen overnight. When he first brought them home, Lila wouldn't speak for days, and Luna flinched at loud sounds. They slept with the light on. They hoarded food under their beds. Had taken months to build trust. Through bedtime stories, music, and long walks with no pressure to talk. Now here they were, standing in the eye of a social media storm, and Ethan couldn't stop it. He wasn't sure if he wanted to. One evening that week, after dinner, Ethan sat them down. They were still humming that lullaby under their breath, sitting on the couch with knees tucked up and socks mismatched. Girls, he began, rubbing the back of his neck. I need to talk to you about something. About everything that's happening. They looked up at him, silent, waiting. Your video. A lot of people have seen it. People are talking about you online. Some are saying you should go on TV. Sing for bigger audiences. There's talk of agents. Music people. Luna's eyes widened. Lila's expression tightened. I haven't said yes to anything. Ethan added quickly. I wouldn't do that without asking you first. Silence fell between them. At Luna, then back at Ethan. Do we have to? She asked softly. No, he said firmly. Never. You don't have to do anything you don't want. It's your choice. But people liked us. Luna whispered. They weren't mean. They weren't. Ethan agreed. But sometimes attention can change people. It can make them expect things. I want you both to be safe. That's the most important thing. They nodded, clearly overwhelmed. That night, after they went to bed, Ethan sat up late scrolling through emails and messages from reporters, bloggers, talent scouts, even record labels. Everyone wanted a piece of the twin girls with the angelic voices. He drafted a short response he sent to everyone. Thank you for your interest. Lila and Luna are children, and their well-being comes first. We are not pursuing any opportunities at this time. But the world didn't let go that easily. By Friday, the school had received inquiries too. Principal Hartman called Ethan in for a meeting. He was a clean-shaven man with salt and pepper hair and a perpetually serious expression. We're incredibly proud of the girls, he said, folding his hands on the desk. And I respect your decision to protect them. But the reality is, they're becoming a symbol. We're getting calls from news outlets, educational organizations, even nonprofits asking about music funding. Ethan sighed. I get it. They're just kids. They've been through enough. I understand. But this may be a chance for them, for the school, for other kids like them. Maybe we can shape this attention into something meaningful. Ethan didn't reply right away. The idea of making meaning from pain, that was something he could support. But not if it cost his girls their peace. The following week took another turn. A reporter from the local newspaper, Melissa Crane, reached out. Unlike the others, she didn't ask for a press conference or a video shoot. She asked for coffee. I'd like to write a piece about the girls' journey, she said over the phone. Not just their talent, but their lives. Where they've come from. What you've given them. What Ethan was wary. But something in her voice sounded different. Real, at a quiet cafe near the edge of town. Melissa was in her 40s, with a notepad, thick glasses, and a kind smile. She asked about the girls, about their past, about how Ethan had come to adopt them. He told her the truth. I met them through a music outreach program I was volunteering at, he said. They were in the system. Scared. Unnerved. Barely speaking. But when I handed them a toy microphone, something changed. They started to hum. That's when I knew. Melissa listened. Nodded. Why did you decide to take them in? She asked. Because they needed someone, Ethan replied simply. And so did I. She published the article 3 days later. The headline read, Saved by Song. How a single dad gave 2 forgotten girls a voice. It was heartfelt, respectful, and beautiful. And it changed everything. Suddenly, the narrative wasn't just about a viral video. It was about trauma, healing, love. Ethan found himself fielding calls from foster care nonprofits, mental health advocates, musicians who had grown up in similar circumstances. Donations poured into the school's tiny music program. Parents from around town emailed Principal Hartman, asking how they could help. Lila and Luna didn't fully understand the impact at first. To them, it was still about music and the safe arms of Ethan's hugs. But they could feel it. In the warm smiles from strangers. In the music class that suddenly had new keyboards and ukuleles. In the kindness from classmates who used to ignore them. One afternoon, while working on homework, Luna looked up and asked, Did we change something? Ethan smiled. I think you did. But not everyone was happy. Whispers started again. This time from parents who questioned how a single man with no high income and no wife had been allowed to adopt 2 vulnerable girls. One anonymous message sent to the district office questioned whether Ethan was exploiting them for attention. Another suggested he was unqualified to manage their new fame. When Ethan heard about it, his chest tightened. He hadn't asked for any of this. He had only ever wanted to give the girls a quiet, safe life. Now the very system he had fought to help them escape threatened to reopen wounds. He sat the girls down again, You might hear people saying things, he said gently. About me. About us. But I want you to know, we're okay. No matter what happens, I'm not going anywhere. Lila looked at him, eyes wide. They want to take us. No, he said quickly. I'm your legal guardian. And I will fight for you if I have to. Always. The girls nodded. They didn't say much, but Ethan knew they were afraid. So he made a decision. He contacted a lawyer. He updated their documentation. He reached out to a child therapist to ensure the girls had support. And he started working on something else. Something bigger. If the world wanted to hear their voices, fine. But it would be on their terms. He began designing a small concert, an invite-only performance at the school auditorium. It wouldn't be flashy, just them, a few songs. He reached out to the foster care foundation that had helped him through the adoption process. Together, they planned to use the concert to raise funds for children in the system who, like Lila and Luna, had been forgotten. The twins agreed. We want to sing for kids like us, Lila said. For the ones still waiting, Luna added. As rehearsals began, shifted in them. They were no longer scared. Their voices grew stronger, more confident. They began suggesting harmonies, experimenting with melodies, laughing more. It wasn't about perfection. It was about being heard. At night, they'd curl up beside Ethan on the couch, watching old music documentaries. One evening, after watching a young girl sing in a church choir, Lila whispered, "Maybe we could do that too. Not just sing. Help." And Ethan, heart full, nodded. That's exactly what you're doing. They weren't just singing anymore. They were becoming storytellers, messengers, survivors, and the silence they had once lived in, the silence of being unwanted, unseen, unheard, was gone. What replaced it was something more powerful. Hope. The auditorium was quiet again, but this time it was a purposeful silence, the uncomfortable hush that came before ridicule. Rows of folding chairs were set up with care, the stage lit gently by strings of soft white bulbs, hung like constellations over a dark velvet curtain. It was the night of the benefit concert. Lila and Luna's idea brought to life by Ethan's hard work and unwavering love. But as the quiet hum of people entering the school began to fill the space, something heavier crept into the atmosphere. A sense that something deeper than music was about to be shared. Ethan stood off to the side of the stage, clipboard in hand, but his fingers drummed anxiously against the paper. The girls were backstage with Mrs. Donahue, rehearsing one final time in whispers, while volunteers from the school and the local foster foundation bustled about. It wasn't a massive event by any measure, but it had attracted more attention than anyone anticipated. The local news station was present again. A popular blogger who had covered the twins' story in a heartfelt post was sitting near the front row. And Melissa Crane, the reporter who had so compassionately told Ethan's story, sat with her notepad open, observant but respectful. Despite all the friendly faces, Ethan couldn't shake the unease building in his gut. He wasn't worried about the girls' singing. They were ready, and they wanted this. But something darker had begun to stir in the weeks leading up to this event. His inbox had been filling with messages. Some warm, some kind, but others less so. Angry whispers from strangers who didn't believe someone like him could possibly offer the girls a stable home. People who hadn't seen the quiet nights, the nightmares, the soup dinners shared in a small kitchen. People who didn't know love when they saw it. One email in particular still sat like a stone in his heart. Those girls should be with a real family, not a handyman playing daddy for attention. It had no signature, just bile. He had deleted it, but not forgotten. And now, as the room began to fill with people eager to hear the twins sing again, Ethan couldn't help but worry. Would this concert open old wounds? Would it invite more scrutiny? Backstage, Lila adjusted the hem of her faded blue dress, the nicest thing she owned, and looked up at Luna, who was clutching the mic with both hands. "Do you think they'll like it again?" Luna whispered. "They did before," Lila answered, though her voice quivered. "But this time, it's different." It was. This time they were singing not just to be heard, but to share a piece of themselves. Their set included 3 songs, the lullaby their mother used to sing, a song they'd written with Ethan called Window Light, and a new original piece titled Home Isn't a Place. It had taken weeks to finish that last one. The lyrics were theirs, but Ethan had helped them shape the melody. It told the story of being shuffled through houses that didn't want them, of sleeping with one eye open, of crying into pillows that weren't their own. And then, in the second verse, to warm hands making grilled cheese, to stories read by firelight, to the soft rhythm of guitar strings strummed by a man who never asked for anything, but gave them everything. It was their truth. And tonight, they would sing it. The concert began with a brief introduction from the principal, followed by a message from the Foster Foundation director, who thanked everyone for coming and reminded the audience why they were there. To support children like Lila and Luna, who had survived what others couldn't imagine. Then the lights dimmed and the twins stepped onto the stage. A hush fell. This time there were no giggles, no jokes, just eager silence and held breaths. They began with the lullaby, and the moment their voices emerged, soft and interwoven, the audience leaned in as if afraid to miss even one note. Ethan stood in the wings, frozen, watching them with both awe and heartbreak. Had they grown so much so fast? He saw in them the echoes of his wife's strength and the reflection of the love he'd tried to pour into every day since they came into his life. As the first song ended, the audience erupted in applause, standing again as they had at the showcase. But this time, the clapping was followed by shouts of "Brava!" and "Angels!" They didn't pause. They moved into the second song, Window Light. This one was brighter, more hopeful. It spoke of tiny victories, learning to ride a bike in a parking lot, discovering a new favorite food, laughing at Ethan's terrible jokes. The song was their love letter to healing. Came the final piece. Home Isn't a Place. The guitar started low and slow, a rhythm like a heartbeat. The twins' voices rose, harmonizing gently, carrying lyrics that landed like soft blows. I lived in houses with hollow halls, where names were shouted through paper walls. I wore old shoes and dreams too small, afraid to fly. And then. But then I met a man who didn't run. He didn't call me foster daughter one. He made me soup. He brushed my hair. He never once pretended I wasn't there. The room was still, save for the occasional sniffle. Home isn't a place you find. It's hands that hold and hearts that bind. Ethan covered his mouth. The tears came faster than he could wipe them away. I've slept in silence. I've wept in rain, learned that love can ease the pain. And now I sing, not to survive, to say I'm finally alive. The final note rang long and clear, their voices twined as one. Silence followed. The mocking silence they'd once feared, but the sacred kind, the kind that comes after revelation. Then applause, roars, cheering. Some sobbed openly. Teachers, strangers, parents. Melissa Crane sat unmoving for a moment, then closed her notepad. She knew there was no need for more writing that night. The song had said it all. Ethan waited at the side of the stage, and when the girls stepped off, he caught them in his arms and held them tight. "You were perfect," he whispered, voice thick, more than perfect. Later, during the small reception held in the gym, the girls were approached by a young couple with a child about Luna's age. "Thank you," the woman said, eyes glistening. "Our daughter is in foster care too. She's been afraid to sing in front of anyone. She asked us for a microphone." Lila and Luna didn't speak. They just smiled, quietly understanding. But amid the warmth, Ethan felt something else. Across the gym, he noticed a man watching. Dressed in a sharp blazer, phone in hand, not applauding, just watching. When Ethan caught his eye, the man nodded slightly and turned away. The next day, Ethan received a letter in the mail. It was from the Department of Child Welfare. He opened it slowly, heart hammering. Inside was a formal request for a follow-up welfare check. A routine review, they claimed, triggered by recent media attention and third-party inquiries. He sat down hard. They were watching him, judging him, again. He called the number listed and scheduled the visit, trying to keep his voice calm. He told the girls that someone would be coming to see them, just to make sure everything was okay. He didn't want to frighten them, but they understood more than they let on. "Are they trying to take us away?" Lila asked bluntly. "No," Ethan said, kneeling before her. "They're just doing their job, but we'll show them the truth." And when the social worker arrived, a woman named Teresa with tired eyes and a firm handshake, she didn't find a man seeking fame. She found a father folding laundry, cooking homemade chili, helping with math homework at the kitchen table. She saw 2 girls who smiled now, who made up songs while brushing their teeth, who kept a framed photo of their mother beside a candle Ethan helped them light each night. After the visit, Teresa called her supervisor and filed her report. "All clear. Leave them be." But the scrutiny didn't disappear. The story had taken on a life of its own. Some praised Ethan as a hero. Others questioned his motives, and still twisted the story into clickbait or political talking points. Ethan tried to shield the girls from it, but the internet was everywhere. After noon, Luna came home unusually quiet. After some coaxing, she handed Ethan her tablet. An article headline read, "Single father uses foster girls to climb fame ladder." "Is this the next TikTok, Dad?" Ethan's jaw clenched. He turned the tablet off, wrapped Luna in his arms, and whispered, "That's not who we are. That's not who you are." "But it hurts," she said. "I know," he replied. That night, he sat awake long after the girls had gone to bed. His guitar sat across the room, untouched. He'd always found peace in music, but tonight felt heavier. Then he thought about their final song. About the words, "finally alive." They were alive. More than that, they were thriving. So what if people didn't understand? He didn't save them for the world. He saved them for themselves. For that first morning when they smiled at breakfast. For the first night they slept without nightmares. For the little notes they left him now. "Thank you for lunch," or "You're the best." For love. And no stranger with a keyboard could ever take that away. Let me know when you're ready for Chapter 4, also 5,000 words, or if you'd like images or scene prompts based on this chapter. The wind carried the scent of spring through the cracked kitchen window. As sunlight spilled across the breakfast table, it danced over mismatched plates, a chipped blue mug filled with steaming coffee, 2 half-eaten pieces of toast arranged into smiley faces by tiny fingers. The room was alive with warmth. It was the kind that didn't come from weather or walls. It came from something deeper. Something harder, earned. Ethan Carter leaned back in his chair, his sleeves rolled to his elbows, his eyes watching Lila and Luna finish their breakfast with quiet conversation about science class and art projects. The girls had grown, not just in inches but in spirit. The skittish, shadow-eyed twins who had entered his life a year ago had blossomed into vibrant, thoughtful, and impossibly resilient young girls who laughed freely and sang with a clarity that touched even the hardest hearts. The aftermath of the benefit concert had changed many things. It hadn't just changed how the world saw the twins. It had changed how the girls saw themselves. Their performance, once an act of survival, become a declaration of their past, of their pain, of their strength. The weeks following the concert had brought a torrent of attention. Media requests kept arriving, though Ethan declined most of them. Music labels asked for meetings. Agents called. Offers to fly the girls to New York or Los Angeles came with promises of stardom. Ethan had turned them all down with polite but firm words. They're children. Let them be. He protected them like he always had, even when protecting them meant saying no to things they were curious about. Because curiosity was different from readiness, and Ethan had seen the cost of early fame, had watched it consume artists, tear apart lives. He wouldn't let that happen to his girls. Instead, he channeled the attention into something good. With the help of Melissa Crane, the reporter who had faithfully told their story, and the Foster Foundation that had hosted the benefit, Ethan launched Harmony House, a nonprofit community program designed to offer free music lessons, therapy through songwriting, and emotional support to foster children and adoptees. The project was funded by donations from people touched by the twins' performance, and from grants Melissa helped secure. The twins were part of every decision. They helped pick the name. Luna designed the logo, a pair of music notes wrapped in vines. Lila suggested the idea of monthly open mic nights for kids who had never spoken up before. Ethan taught the first guitar lessons himself, often using the same dusty acoustic his wife once played beside the fireplace. Harmony House quickly became more than a program, became a sanctuary. One of the first students to walk through its doors was a 10-year-old girl named Maya, small for her age, quiet, her eyes darting nervously around the room like she expected to be yelled at. Her file, delivered discreetly by her caseworker, told a familiar story: abandonment, trauma, fear. But when Luna sat beside her at a keyboard and taught her how to play a single scale, a real smile. That afternoon, Lila braided her hair while Maya hummed along. They were healing by helping others heal. Still, it wasn't always easy. Ethan often lay awake at night worried. About money. About how long this could last. About what would happen if things changed. He knew joy could be fragile, and the world was often cruel to those who had already endured so much. There were days when Luna woke from dreams she couldn't explain, curled tightly into herself. Days when Lila refused to speak more than a few words. Healing was not linear. It was a winding road with sharp turns. But now they walked that road together. One Sunday morning, as the twins helped Ethan sort through letters and drawings sent from kids across the country, a small blue envelope fell from the stack. It was addressed in pencil, messy and faint, to Lila and Luna Carson. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a photograph. The photo showed two young girls, no older than 6, standing on the front steps of a group home. Their smiles were uncertain, their arms locked tight around each other. The letter read, "Dear Lila and Luna, my sister and I live in a place with too many kids. We saw your video on the tablet when our foster mom showed it to us. We never knew other sisters could be like us. We also like singing. We don't get to do it a lot. Thank you for showing us it's okay. Love, Jesse and Callie." The twins stared at the photo for a long time. Lila turned to Ethan and said, "We should write them back. Better yet." Luna added, "Let's send them a video, a little lesson. They can sing with us." That became a new tradition. Every month, the twins created short videos teaching simple songs, singing harmonies, and encouraging other kids to use their voices. Harmony House shared them through its website, and soon, They had over a dozen submissions from children in shelters and homes across the country. Some were off-key, some were shy, all were brave. Still, the outside world continued watching. One evening, as Ethan walked into the kitchen balancing a tray of lemonade and crackers for the girls' Harmony House group, his phone buzzed on the counter. The screen flashed a name he hadn't expected to see again: Mara Tilson, executive producer. Studios. He stared at it for a long moment before answering. "Hello, Mr. Carter," came the familiar, silky voice. "I'm reaching out again because we're putting together a docuseries on real life stories of resilience. We'd love to talk to you and the girls. We've been over this," Ethan said, trying not to sound curt. "They're not public property." "I understand," she said, smooth as ever. "But I think this would help people. Your story could change lives." "It already has," Ethan said, and hung up. He didn't tell the girls about the call. He didn't need to. They had everything they needed: each other, their music, and the quiet, steady world they were helping build. But fate had a way of presenting things you thought you were done with. 3 weeks later, the school principal called Ethan in. The district was planning a regional arts event, showcasing exceptional student talents across counties, and they wanted Lila and Luna to headline. It wasn't televised. There were no cameras, no contracts, just a stage, a crowd of young artists, and a chance to inspire peers in a setting far removed from the viral fame that had once swept them up like a riptide. Ethan left the decision to the girls. They said yes. The venue was larger than Fair Hill's humble auditorium. Rows of seating stretched out beneath soft stage lighting. As the girls stood backstage, dressed in their now signature mismatched skirts and ribboned shoes, Ethan crouched beside them. "No matter what happens," he said, "remember why you sing." Lila nodded. "For the kids still waiting." Luna added, "For us." Their performance was quieter this time. Simpler, no fancy backdrops, just a piano, a spotlight, clear voices filling the space. They chose to perform. "Home isn't a place," again, by request. But they added a new verse, written just the night before. "Not every door is safe to knock. Not every heart's a welcome lock. When the music found its way, that's when our night became our day." By the time they finished, the audience rose not with wild cheering, but with reverent clapping, slow, steady, full of awe. Backstage, as they packed up, awkward, braces flashing when she smiled. "You guys made me cry," she said. Luna blinked. "Are you okay?" the girl said. It was a good cry. Back in their small home that night, Ethan tucked them in as he always did. But this time, as he turned off the light, Lila spoke up. "Do you think Mom would be proud?" Ethan paused, then walked back to her bed, kneeling beside it. "I think," he said slowly, "that she's watching you. And she's singing with you. Every time." That night, he stayed up late in the living room, watching the girls' earliest performance again. The one that started everything. The grainy school auditorium video. Their nervous faces. The harmony that stopped time. So much had changed since then. But one thing hadn't. Their voices, pure, untrained, still held the power to reach into hearts and pull out things long buried. Sadness. Memory. Hope. As Ethan turned off the TV and headed to bed, he paused by the hallway, where a few framed photos now lined the wall. There was one of the twins in the garden, covered in dirt and laughing. One of them with their first donated guitar. One of all three of them. Sitting on the couch under a blanket, the caption in Luna's handwriting, "Our forever home." He didn't need the world to understand. He didn't need headlines or applause. He had built something real, and nothing, no opinion, no scandal, no headline, could ever take it away. Music had saved them. But more than that, love had. And in the quiet of that house, on a peaceful street, with the faint hum